At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
This episode is brought to you by Pluto TV. Are you looking for your next case? Pluto TV has all your favorite crime dramas streaming for free, which means suspicion is free, with countless cases to crack. Watch CSI, Criminal Minds, NCIS, Blue Bloods, Tracker, FBI, and SWAT, all for free from all your favorite devices. Feel the free. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.
This podcast contains adult themes and language, and some of the things that we discuss may be disturbing to some listeners. In this podcast, we discuss sexual assault, torture, race, and murder. Listener discretion is advised. Please take care of yourself.
Let's get into Christopher Dwayne Peterson's early life. We don't have a lot of details about Christopher Dwayne Peterson's early life, but his father was a career Army soldier. And Christopher moved with his family from post to post, living in Cleveland, Ohio, Fort Riley, Kansas, and El Paso, Texas. Some of the mitigating factors that were later brought up in court were that he was neglected in childhood by his father, and he had an extreme emotional disturbance.
Christopher attended high school in Gary, and after graduation, he went to Atlanta to live with an uncle while working in security at the airport parking lot. In May of 1988, he went into the Marine Corps. He spent 2 years in the Marines and became a corporal stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
There, he became disillusioned with the military. He says he found the Marines to be filled with hypocrisy, factionalism, racism, and impersonalism. While in the Marines, he was trying to cope with the death of his son, Christopher, who was born on July 8th, 1988, and died in January of 1989.
That's really sad.
Yeah, it is.
He said, quote, "It left a lasting scar for me about the Marine Corps. They didn't care. There is no healing. Marines are not supposed to suffer. But people are human. I was 19. There's nothing in life like losing a child," unquote.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah.
So, in May of 1990, miserable and depressed, Christopher went AWOL and moved back in with his mother and older sister in Gary. He was unemployed and sold drugs to get by. His mother allowed other persons to stay at the apartment and gave them keys, including Christopher's friend, Antoine McGee, and his mother's boyfriend, Major Moore.
Christopher was described by friends and family as caring and supportive of others, and generous with friends, driving one friend to and from work because the friend did not have any transportation.
He and his girlfriend had been dating since high school, and she said that he was never violent towards her or anyone else unless they provoked him. He also helped out her family whenever they needed. Christopher Peterson was 21 years old at the time of the murders, so now let's get into the timeline. Hit it, Beth.
Between October 30th, 1990 and December 18th, 1990, there were a series of murders in northern Indiana in which 7 people were killed and several others were wounded by assault with a shotgun. The shootings occurred in bursts, and victims appeared to be chosen at random. Most of those killed suffered a shotgun blast to the head at close range.
The first series of murders began in Lake County on October 30th, 1990. At about 7:30 p.m., Lawrence Mills, a 43-year-old insurance salesman from Hammond, was killed by a shotgun blast to the head as he sat in his car outside an American Legion post in Griffith, Indiana.
Patrons leaving the establishment found Lawrence dead in his car, still dressed in the 3-piece business suit he had worn that day to work. There were no witnesses, but patrons said that they saw a white car leaving the scene. While processing the crime scene, police found a palm print on Lawrence Mills's car.
Later that same night at about 8:30 p.m., a half-mile north from the Legion Hall, a 34-year-old woman was dropping off a package at a home in Griffith when she heard the crunch of dry leaves. She turned and saw a man fire a shotgun. The shot missed. She screamed, and the shooter fled. The woman was unable to identify her attacker, but shotgun pellets were found at the scene.
At about 10 p.m., 17-year-old Anne Nikolic of St. John was approached by a man as she exited her car in a parking garage. He ordered her to be quiet, but she screamed, and he shot, narrowly missing her, then fled. She reportedly told police that her attacker was a black man, but a police report said that she described him as white.
Okay. So shortly afterwards, at about 10:20 p.m., Rhonda Hammersley, 25, and Carrie Gilson, 28, were chatting outside of a Petrol Mart gas station in Cedar Lake where they worked. They had just completed their closing routine and were waiting for Rhonda's husband to come pick her up. Carrie was sitting in the driver's seat of her car while Rhonda chatted with her through the driver's side window.
A man walked around the corner of the gas station and without a word, shot Rhonda point blank in the head with a sawed-off shotgun. He then turned toward Carrie and aimed his shotgun at her. Carrie fell to her right, onto the passenger's front side of her vehicle. Almost simultaneously, the shotgun discharged, missing Carrie and hitting the inside panel of the passenger door.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
Carrie pretended to be dead. Ooh, smart. As she lay there, she felt what she assumed to be the barrel of the shotgun pushing against the back of her head.
Oh, my God.
But the man didn't fire. She heard someone say, quote, "Okay, that's enough. Let's go," unquote. Ooh.
Moments later, Carrie raised up from the seat. Seeing no one around, she threw the car into reverse and sped off to a nearby liquor store where she called police. Carrie described her attacker as a white man, but she later told police that he could have been Hispanic, and that's her words.
Well, we know transracial witness identification is very poor.
Yeah.
No matter who you are, really. According to Peterson's friend, Ronald Harris, that evening, he and Peterson were cruising the roads, quote, out in the boondocks, unquote, drinking beer and smoking cannabis, when they stopped to buy more rolling papers. Peterson got out of the white Nissan he was driving and headed across the street to a service station near Cedar Lake, taking a shotgun with him.
Harris heard a sound like a car backfiring. Peterson came back to the car and threw a woman's purse at him. Harris said he shoved it aside and they drove away. Back at the Petromart station, Rhonda Hammersley was dead.
The random murder spree terrorized residents in Lake County. Parents and local government officials feared for children's safety while out trick-or-treating that Halloween. Whew, I bet.
Yeah.
A lot of people chose to stay home after sunset rather than risk going out. Retailers reported a sharp drop in nighttime sales, and police reported an increase in gun permits.
Carrie worked with the police on a composite picture of the gunman. After finishing the composite picture, Carrie expressed doubts about its accuracy. But the drawing was distributed on flyers. It included Carrie's description of the gunman, printed along the bottom of it. Male, Caucasian, 5'10", early to mid-20s, slender build, dark eyes, prominent brow line, light complexion, no facial hair, dark brown collar-length hair.
I understand the urgency that law enforcement may have felt to protect the community and get
this guy
word out, right, and get this guy. But if it's not accurate, they're doing the entire community a disservice.
Yeah,
Hello?
there's no point. Yeah.
Right.
Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely, and parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/Spotify.
You've maxed out your 401k, you're contributing to an IRA, and making some other investments. You're ahead of the game and doing well. But where do you go from here? The same old story can only get you so far. If you want a new take from a new type of financial professional, we invite you to get a fresh perspective beside an agent with the backing of New York Life. Insurance, investments, retirement, and more. Visit nyl.com to learn more. Investments are offered through registered representatives of NyLife Securities, LLC, member FINRA SIPC, a New York Life company.
The second series of murders began on the evening of December 13th, 1990. Harchand Dhaliwal, 54, was working inside a gas station in Portage. Harchand had arrived in the United States from India 3 or 4 years prior. He and a friend partnered up to buy the gas station and had just paid the down payment the day before.
Oh, that's sad.
Mm-hmm.
At about 6:20 p.m., Harchand was killed in an apparent robbery. He was shot in the face, and about $328 was missing from the cash register. According to Ronald Harris, he was waiting in a car while Peterson went into the gas station, shotgun in hand, then aimed and fired the weapon at Harchand.
Harris said he heard a gun blast, then saw the man fall. He remembered that Harchand was wearing a white or light-colored turban. Peterson then came back to the car and threw money spattered with the blood of the victim at him.
The stories that Harris tells, Peterson's always doing the thing and then throwing things at him. Purse, money.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a friend. What a guy. Thank you for being a friend.
Then on December 15th, 1990, at about 8:20 p.m., Ora Wildermuth, 54, of Lake Station, was shot to death at a Gaynor Bank ATM in Gary. Peterson later told police he shot Wildermuth twice with a shotgun because Wildermuth started cursing at him after the first blast. Like,
wow.
Of course he did.
Yeah.
You just shot me, motherfucker.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
Wildermuth died from gunshot wounds to his head and body.
Well, at least he didn't go down without, he fought, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But tragic. At 8:50 p.m., Marie Meitzler, 48, was working alone as the desk clerk in a Howard Johnson motel in Portage when she was shot to death in an apparent robbery. She suffered gunshot wounds to her face and neck, and $467 was stolen.
At 9:56 p.m., Robert Kotzo, 49, an Indiana toll road attendant, was shot and wounded at a toll plaza on Calumet Avenue. He lost part of his right ear after a man fired a shotgun at him as he worked inside a toll booth at the Hammond Interchange on the eastbound Indiana toll road. He described his attacker as a black man.
I'm just bothered by these people doing their jobs, just working, right? And
just doing what they got to do, and somebody
decides
they're going to go around and shoot people.
Yeah.
Well, it just sounds like this guy, Robert Kotzo, was just in the toll booth. Mm-hmm. And they shot him. They shot him. Yeah. That's nuts.
Yeah, exactly. It's all nuts. It's Fruitloops, I tell you. So on December 18th, 1990, at about 4:45 p.m., 2 immigrant brothers from Macedonia were murdered at their tailor shop in Gary. Eli Balofsky, 60, of Crown Point, and George Balofsky, 66, of Gary, were both shot to death inside Eli's Quality Tailoring in Gary. Eli was robbed of several $100s in cash. Both men died from gunshot wounds to the head.
A task force of local, state, and federal law enforcement was organized to investigate the murders, and at least one gun store reported a 5-fold increase in the sale of firearms as a result of the murders.
Wow.
Many people stopped going out at night or went out armed.
Local businesses and cities offered rewards for information. A toll-free tip hotline was jammed with calls. Police thought they knew 2 things about the shotgun killer based on witness statements. He was a slender white man with medium-length hair, and he drove a small, boxy white car.
According to Antoine McGee, a friend of Peterson's, shortly after the Balofsky killings, Peterson told McGee that he, quote, got the guys at the tailor shop, unquote, and then described the murders in detail.
Interesting. I am still baffled throughout all of these that whoever was doing this was confused about the race of the shooter. That seems...
Oh, you mean the people, the witnesses.
Yeah. Because the picture of Dwayne Christopher Peterson, that's clearly a black man. I mean,
right.
I'm just wondering, I don't know. On January 28th, 1991, Peterson's mother told him that he could no longer live with her at her apartment. She helped him pack his belongings and took him to his girlfriend's house to stay, with the understanding that he was to turn himself in for being AWOL from the Marines.
That evening at 10:45 p.m., Ronald Nitch, 31, a restaurant manager, took the night receipts from the restaurant to a bank in the South Lake Mall parking lot to deposit them. He had just made the deposit when he turned and saw a man with a handgun.
Ronald was shot and the bullet went through his cheek and lodged in his neck. He ran away toward the mall and survived. Ronald identified his assailant as a black man wearing dark clothing. The attacker took his car. So now we're going to get into the investigation and the arrest. What do you got, Beth?
Well, early on January 29th, while police were still at the scene of the shooting by the mall, investigators heard radio communications indicating a car matching the description of the vehicle taken in the robbery had been spotted near Ridge Road and Georgia Street in Gary.
Soon after, the police saw a vehicle matching this description and, noting the license plate number, confirmed that it was a stolen car. The police also observed a copper Grand Am with 2 occupants, both of them black males, traveling with the Nissan Sentra.
The driver of the Nissan Sentra stopped the car in the middle of the road, got out, and ran.
Ooh.
He was wearing a black jogging suit with purple markings, which matched Ronald's description of his assailant.
That's so 1990s, a jogging suit. A Nissan Sentra and a jogging suit. Let's go have a good time. So shortly afterwards, another police officer observed 2 black males on foot in the vicinity, Antoine McGee and Major Moore, one of whom, McGee, fit the description of the assailant who had just fled from police.
The 2 men were transported to the police station for questioning as suspects in the robbery and shooting. McGee identified himself as the driver of the copper Grand Am. Police interrogated McGee, whom police believed had shot Ronald Nitsch.
McGee said he did not do it, and he told police that Peterson was responsible and was in fact the shotgun killer. This surprised law enforcement officers who had been searching up to that point for a white man with medium-length hair. What?
McGee told police that Peterson had told him of his plan to commit a robbery and asked McGee to help. McGee admitted that he drove Peterson to the South Lake Mall, why did Peterson need a ride? Peterson had a car.
That's right.
Yeah. Peterson was wearing a black jogging suit and carrying a handgun as he got out of the car and approached the bank.
McGee then drove away but looked back and saw a silver Nissan arrive at the bank. Later in the evening, he saw Peterson driving the same silver Nissan. McGee also told police details about the Balofsky brothers' killings that had not been made public, such as that one brother had been killed upstairs and the second brother downstairs. How does he know all these details?
Yeah. The police went to Peterson's mother's apartment to look for Peterson. According to police, they received consent from his mother to search the apartment in an attempt to find Peterson. But Peterson's mother later disputed whether she gave police permission.
Oh, I'm sure she did not. I'm 100% sure she did not. And they lied. I'm confident. I will confidently say they lied about
probably.
That part. In any case, they did not find him, but while they were in Peterson's bedroom, they seized a sawed-off shotgun found in plain view in the closet. The officers also seized a duffel bag containing clothing and shells from the shotgun. The court later suppressed the duffel bag evidence because the items inside the bag were not in plain view and were therefore seized illegally.
A gun expert later determined through ballistics testing that spent shells found at 3 murder scenes matched the gun found in Peterson's bedroom. Peterson owned a boxy white car, which witnesses had seen at several crime scenes, and his palm print matched prints lifted from Lawrence Mills's car.
A black leather coat spattered with blood was also found. The blood was found to be human, but at the time, the 5 spatter marks were not enough to match with any of the victim's DNA. The jacket was later lost.
Great
What?
job, Gary Police.
You guys are professional police people? What?
Police found Peterson at his girlfriend's apartment in Gary and took him in. Peterson was questioned by police until mid-afternoon, at which time he asked to speak with his mother. After a brief conversation, Peterson then asked if he could sleep on it.
That's very funny to me. Let me give it a think.
Let me sleep on it. I don't know.
That is, wow. And I didn't know that you could do that. Like tell the police, you know what? I don't know if I want to talk to you. So I thought that you had, I mean, now that I'm thinking about it,
it's up to the police. He's been arrested. So, I mean, if he was just being questioned, then you can always leave. But if you've been arrested, you're kind of stuck there.
Yeah.
So it's up to the police. Like he could say, can I sleep on it? And they're like, no. But...
Okay. Thanks for Thanks, friend.
I mean,
in
correct
my
me if I'm
mind,
wrong.
well, yeah, I mean, I guess I thought I didn't realize when you're in custody that you can say, let me talk to you later.
Yeah.
But he did. So the next morning, Peterson was again interviewed by the police, at which time he gave a taped confession. You know how Wendy feels about confessions. But anyway, confessing to committing all 7 of the shotgun murders. In the tapes, Peterson, 22 at the time, volunteered that his motive was hatred of white people. And this sounds like something the police made up. He said the murders were fueled by rage, drugs, and alcohol. He signed several statements confessing to the shootings, but he later recanted his statements.
So do you think that they wrote up the confession
I think they
and just
made
had
it
him
all up.
sign it?
This is, it reminds me of, remember when the FBI wrote those letters to Martin Luther King and was like,
oh yeah,
you're talking jive, MLK, like trying to speak like a black person. This sounds like they're putting words into like a black person's mouth, right? No, I don't think a black person would come out and say, I killed, like Samuel L. Jackson in that movie. Yeah, I shot him and I'd shoot him again. When in A Time to Kill, I think it is. That just doesn't sound to me like something somebody would confess to.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. So Peterson is a dark-skinned black man with short hair, which contradicted the composite sketch, which was based on statements from Carrie Gilson, who described the killer as a white man with medium-length stringy hair.
But they have to close the case, right? The community is probably on edge and they have a lot of pressure. So they get the confession, bada bing, bada boom. Case closed? No. The incongruity upset the community so much that Gary Mayor Thomas Barnes sent a letter asking police to clarify the confusion about the suspect's race. What do you have to say for yourselves? Anyway, Henry Bennett, the head of the Gary branch of the NAACP, said his office received many calls from people, quote, disturbed about the complete turnaround pertaining to the shotgun killer, unquote. Explain yourselves.
Ronald J. Golston, a senior state parole officer and a black man who lived in Gary, said, quote, first the police say it's a white guy, and then all of a sudden they arrest a black guy. Everybody around here said another one of us is getting the shaft, unquote.
That took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah.
So Ralph Staples, one of the Lake County prosecutors, scoffed at claims that the murders were racially motivated, pointing out many of the murders involved robberies. Staples commented, quote, he was a bandit, not a bigot, unquote. Oh my gosh. This is tomfoolery.
Yes, you're right. So one possible explanation is that Ronald Harris, who is accused of being with Peterson at 2 of the killings, is a light-skinned black man with long hair. And on February 8, 1991, Harris, 21, was arrested in Gary on charges of aiding a criminal. He admitted that he was involved and confessed to accompanying Peterson during 2 of the murders, those of Harchand Dhaliwal and Rhonda Hammersley.
On February 23rd, 1991, Carrie Gilson, who had witnessed Rhonda Hammersley's murder, identified Ronald Harris in a lineup. He was charged with Rhonda Hammersley's and Harchand Dhaliwal's murders. So now let's get into the trial. And this is a doozy because there was a lot of them.
Yeah, there was a lot of trials. Here we go. So Ronald Harris was tried in June 1991 for the murder of Harchand Dhaliwal. Harris claimed that Peterson did it, stating that he was merely a bystander who had stuff thrown at him.
Okay, that's right. That's right. Dodgeball, you're in.
The prosecution claimed that Harris had accompanied Peterson during another murder, that of Rhonda Hammersley. The witness to Rhonda's murder, Carrie Gilson, had identified Harris as Rhonda's murderer.
And I buy Harris's account because she was the closest, right, to the shooting. She was in the car, right, when it happened.
You mean Carrie Gilson?
Yes.
Yeah.
And she was the one who was like, I don't know about this sketch, y'all.
Yeah. And she also said that, she said he was white, but could have been Hispanic, and it was dark,
Yeah. So Harris had given a statement to the FBI in which he said he was with Peterson when Rhonda was murdered. But at his trial, he said he signed the statement because the FBI said he could go home if he did. However, he was convicted and sentenced to 68 years in prison.
Peterson was tried for the 7 shootings over a span of 4 trials, and I think this is a new one for Fruit Loops.
Yeah.
4 trials for one person.
Yep. It's a record.
Yeah. On September 30th, 1991, Peterson went to trial for the murders of Lawrence Mills, who had been killed at the American Legion, and Rhonda Hammersley, who had been killed at the Petromart gas station.
The prosecution believed this case was their strongest, but a key piece of evidence, the palm prints that connected Peterson to Lawrence Mills' vehicle, was suppressed before trial by the judge when he ruled that at the time, police did not have enough evidence to arrest him.
Carrie Gilson testified at trial that it was not Peterson who shot Hammersley, even though Peterson confessed to the murder. But she was barred from telling jurors that she believed Ronald Harris was the real killer.
I'm sure true crime people know this, but when you have a trial, the judge is like the referee, right?
Right.
So, judges can decide what they allow and what they don't. And I just sometimes think, and I think a lot of it has to do with what everybody's supposed to have a fair trial.
Right.
And anything that prejudices the defendant.
Or anything that they do that is illegal, basically, or not allowed.
Yeah.
Then they can, yeah.
And part of that is to avoid the judge's rulings no judge wants their case to be appealed or their rulings to be overturned.
Exactly.
So they want to get it right. But again, more tomfoolery. Anyway, Peterson's defense attorneys used the composite sketch and Carrie Gilson's testimony to blow up the state's case. The jury deliberated for about 6 hours before acquitting Peterson on both murders. Jurors said reasonable doubt was created by Carrie Gilson's testimony and by the confusion over the original description of a white man as the killer.
After the verdict, one juror said that there was disagreement among the jurors about the veracity of Peterson's confession and the way it was obtained. Another juror said that there was just not enough evidence to convict Peterson. One angry juror said, quote, "Just because we say he's not guilty, it doesn't mean he's innocent," unquote.
Well, I guess I don't know. Okay.
I mean, there just wasn't enough evidence.
Yeah. And of the multiple trials, some of the juries were all white.
Yeah.
So in November of 1991, Antwion McGee, who was charged with attempted murder, entered into a plea agreement with the state in which he pled guilty to assisting a criminal and agreed to testify against Peterson in exchange for the state's agreement to drop the robbery charge.
In January of 1992, Peterson went to trial for a second time, this time for the murder of Ora Wildermuth and the attempted murder of Robert Kotzo. That trial also ended in an acquittal.
Jurors expressed doubt over the credibility of the police procedure used to find and arrest Peterson. Jury members said contradictory testimony and a nagging sense that police may have botched the investigation or coerced a confession swayed their decision.
Messy-ass hoes.
Messy-ass hoedness. At it again.
One female juror who asked not to be identified said, quote, "I wanted to convict that guy. I felt he was very, very guilty. It makes me sick that we couldn't convict him according to the evidence. I felt my hands were tied," unquote.
They didn't understand why police didn't get any fingerprints from the murder weapon or why they didn't seal off the crime scene the night of the murder. Police didn't find the shotgun shells until the next day. One male juror said, quote, "Everybody was unhappy with what the police did. The lack of evidence was the biggest problem," unquote.
Jurors said only Peterson's taped confession put him at the murder scene. But even that raised questions. Police had not taped a 25-minute interrogation with Peterson the day before he confessed, which led some jurors to wonder if Peterson might have been coerced.
In March of 1992, that was a big year for America. The LA riots, Rodney King, Peterson went to trial for a third time for the murders of Harshan Diwali and Marie Meitzler. This time, he was convicted, and the all-white jury recommended that he be executed. The following May, after a fourth trial, Peterson was convicted in Lake County for the murders of brothers George and Eli Balvosky, but the jury recommended that he not be executed.
We off?
30 seconds of carefree bliss.
Oof, like wind in your hair carefree.
Oh, like using Clorox Disinfecting All-Purpose Cleaner in the home carefree.
Yes!
Like dog slobbing on the coffee table and cleaning it with Clorox Carefree.
He's on a roll now.
Spit toothpaste on the faucet.
You got it. You got it.
Peanut butter on the light switch.
Oh, spritz, spritz.
Spritz, spritz. Clorox, man. Clean feels good.
Okay, we're back.
Use as directed.
On May 14th, 1992, Ronald Harris was sentenced to 90 years in prison for Rhonda Hammersley's murder. On May 15th, 1992, Peterson was sentenced in Porter County to death for the murders of Harchand, Dhaliwal, and Marie Meitzler.
And on June 5th, 1992, Lake Criminal Court Judge James Clement overrode the jury's recommendation for leniency in the Balvosky murders, and he sentenced Christopher Peterson to death. So now we're going to get into where are they now? Tell us, Beth.
This case was controversial for a number of reasons, such as the description of the suspect as a white man, the legality of Peterson's arrest and confession, and the collection of evidence.
Check, check, check.
Also, there were errors made during the trial, and in the final case, the judge overruled the jury's decision not to impose the death penalty.
Which is a reach. Don't you think?
It is. And yeah, we'll get into it.
It was mentioned in some articles that the trials with all white juries came to different conclusions than juries which included people of other races. But which trials were which was not specified. Interesting. We did find information that the third trial, in which he was convicted and sentenced to death, had an all-white jury.
Surprise!
Yeah.
In any case, in July of 2003, a federal court threw out Peterson's conviction for the December 1990 murders of Marie Meitzler and Harchand Dhaliwal because of the errors committed during the trial.
Specifically, an improper statement was made at trial by Porter County Prosecutor James Douglas when he pointed out to the jury in his closing arguments that Peterson had not testified on his own behalf.
What?
I don't know.
What?
That's what he said.
I mean, he should. He's an attorney. He should know that.
He should know better. Yeah. This was Peterson's constitutional right and could not be construed by jurors as evidence of guilt.
That is just stupid.
Yeah, that's a stupid lawyer move. He got out-lawyered.
Then Peterson's death sentence for the Balvosky brothers' murders was vacated after the Indiana Supreme Court determined in August of 2004 that only a jury's recommendation could condemn a defendant to death. So yeah, that judge overreached.
Yeah. I'm also baffled by that the death penalty is a thing. I mean, if murder is wrong, why does the state get to do it?
Murder is wrong, yeah.
But Lake Criminal Court Judge James Clement had overruled the jury's recommendation for leniency for Peterson, who he ordered Peterson to be put to death in June of 1992. Peterson was resentenced to 2 60-year terms in prison for the murders of Eli Balvosky and George Balvosky.
Peterson spent 19 years on Indiana's death row, and I listened to a podcast where a lady interviewed him, and he said that the last 5 years while he was on death row, he did not have a death sentence over him. He had already been resentenced, and he still sat on death row for 5 years because while Indiana decided whether or not to retry him.
Wow.
Yeah.
That seems like a problem with the system.
Yeah, that's fucked up. So his family remained close to him and visited regularly. 6 months after Peterson had been arrested, he and his girlfriend had another baby, a daughter. And she grew up visiting her dad on death row and is now an adult.
Wow.
That really brings it home, right?
It really does.
To imagine, your baby is born 6 months after you're arrested and is now an adult.
Yeah.
And he's still in prison. Yeah.
Peterson is currently incarcerated at Pendleton Correctional Facility, and he still asserts his innocence. His earliest possible release date is December 23rd, 2050. Merry Christmas, 2050. If he lives that long, he would be 81 years old.
While in prison, Peterson became interested in Eastern philosophy, religion, and mysticism. He called it eclectic spiritualism, from a mixture of Eastern religions, Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism, and Confucianism.
On a website for prisoners, he called himself a, quote, Hebrew Israelite and a conscious new African freedom fighter, unquote. In February of 1997, he legally changed his name to Obadiah ben Yisrael.
Ronald Harris is scheduled to be released from prison in September of 2036.
All right. Well, that's it for the story. Let's get into our takeaways. What do you think made this individual or these individuals snap? What are your thoughts on this case, Beth?
Well, this is a convoluted story, and I'm really not sure what happened.
To say the least.
I do believe that Peterson took part in some of the crimes. I mean, the palm print on the car is pretty hard to explain away.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not convinced that he was the one in charge. A lot of people would have had access to the shotgun. It was in his bedroom of the apartment, his mom's apartment.
Right.
His mom gave keys to the apartment to lots of people. I mean, she was handing them out like candy.
That's right.
Although the last crime was committed with a handgun.
Yes.
And Peterson had moved out of his mom's house, and the shotgun was still there. And I don't know what that means, but there you go.
Yes. Thank you for pointing it out, though. OG of True Crime. Appreciate it.
Anyway, Ronald Harris, I think, may have been the real shotgun killer. And I believe Antoine McGee was also involved, particularly in the attack on Ronald Nitch.
Yeah.
He said he drove Peterson there, but I don't know. Peterson has a car. Why would he have to drive Peterson there?
Right.
And I do think Peterson, like I said, was involved in some way, but I don't think anyone ever got the real story.
I don't think so either. I don't think the police did enough work on this one.
Yeah,
to get to the bottom of it.
Not nearly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So why would Peterson have been involved at all? Well, he went AWOL from the Marines.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine he was trying to fly under the radar and was therefore unable to get a job.
Right.
That explains the robberies. He needed money, but not the murders. Lawrence Mills and Rhonda Hammersley's murders are particularly baffling to me. Like, why they would have been chosen to be robbed. I don't know. Like, why would you think they had money, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And I understand robbing stores, but random folks on the street, you're just not going to get much
it's
there.
Unlikely, yeah.
Yeah. And the folks that were just randomly shot at, like the toll booth worker or the women like getting out of cars or walking down the street, that's just pure anger. Somebody was really angry.
Just somebody really destructive, just wanting to
but that comes from anger.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Yeah. At least I think so. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I've never done it before, but I just, I imagine, like, I'm thinking of the movie Jackass. Like, let's just go shoot stuff.
That's a different thing. I mean, you're not shooting people.
Okay.
I mean, those people are just jackasses.
Sorry, I went there. Right. They are just jackass. Sorry, I went there. Okay. You're right.
So Peterson did express anger towards the Marines, and he was probably frustrated with life in general after going AWOL. So I can see he probably had some anger, but I don't know if there was enough there to justify
killing a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, justify is the wrong word. That would produce this kind of... Explain, yes.
There you go. There we go.
Yeah.
Explain, not an excuse.
Yes.
But, we've talked about serial killers for many years now, you and me, friend.
Yeah.
And the things that they have in common, including military service.
Yep.
And
shitty
childhoods. And so the military service stuck out to me as one of the things that we commonly see with serial killers. This case has a lot of police fuckery.
Yeah.
A lot of prosecutorial fuckery.
Yeah.
And the transracial witness identification and racial prejudice on the part of the jury, I think also play a part in us being like, what the fuck was going on here?
Yeah.
And then, the fact that he was arrested illegally and the confession is questionable at best. And it's a mess. It's a mess. Girl,
it is a big mess.
Fix your face. It's a mess. And I think one of the prosecutors was like, you can't always bring up race. It didn't make any difference that the jury was all white. And you know what? That is bullshit, because everything in this world, especially in America, has to do with race. We couldn't escape race if we tried. Believe me, I've tried.
I mean, just look at the results. I mean, the all-white jury is the one that condemned him to death.
Convicted him in no time at all and sentenced him to death.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But, there's just too many examples in this of how race came into play. And I don't know if Peterson did all of the murders or not, but whoever did, clearly all those victims did not deserve to have their lives taken.
Absolutely.
Especially the ones who, everybody was just minding their beeswax.
Yeah.
And that is often
just
what we
working,
see. Just people working. Yeah.
Doing errands.
Uh-huh.
Getting out of a car.
Yep.
Just nuts.
Dropping things off.
Yeah.
Working at their shop. Everybody's just doing their best to survive, and it's just terrible. So
yeah.
Well, that's it.
That's it. Bye.
Bye. Beth, where can the people find us?
Our website is fruitloopspod.com, and we use Fruit Loops Pod for all of our social media.
This is a weekly podcast, and new episodes drop every Thursday. So until next time, look alive, y'all. It's crazy out there.
My name is Bill Huffman, and I am a former Cleveland news producer, and I am now the host of the podcast, Who Killed? I began the show focusing on the unsolved murder of Amy Mihaljevic, and now each week I explore a different case with a focus on some of the victims who don't get the attention they deserve. I have a deep catalog of over 225 episodes, so there is a guarantee there will be something for you. Who Killed is an evergreen podcast, killer podcasts, and slow burn media production. Subscribe today wherever you get your favorite shows.
The truth about the Haditha massacre has been covered up, but not anymore.
I know you know what happened.
They went into houses and killed women and children.
What are you thinking?
What a mess.
U.S. Marines murdered innocent civilians in cold blood.
And at the center of it all
is 25-year-old Sergeant Frank Wuderick.
And me. Murder in House 2. A new podcast from Crowd Network.